Alright, so the last video here for the concepts and foundations of recreational sport deals with kind of looking at community sport development, as we talked about some of the impacts that sport has on a kind of a quick overview. One additional thing just to kind of take a look at and think about sport on a bigger scale is this community sport development. And the idea is that sport has a role in society, an important role in society, and a lot of you probably feel that way because you're in this major in recreation and sport management, that it is something important. It has had impact on your life. It has helped make who you are, right? And so looking at it from this point, it can also impact the community. And looking at it from that standpoint, sport development basically is putting in place those processes, policies, practices for providing sport opportunities. So what can the community do to help make sure that there is sport in the community, and what are those policies, procedures that are going to be in place to help that takes place, that sport takes place. And that leads into putting in participants. We have to have participants to have our sport, right? But then we also have to have that paid professional staff. Back in the day when they used to have volunteers, like in the Boston Sand Gardens, people from the community volunteered to help watch the kids, and those days are kind of gone by the wayside. Now there's still a lot of volunteers to help this go off. A lot of times your coaches, they were volunteers, and that's still in place. But we also have to have that paid staff to provide that structure and make sure those policies and procedures are followed. And so you have to have that professional staff that exists. You have the volunteers, you have the policy makers, the people that set up the rules, the guidelines. And a lot of times they come from outside the community and set up through governing bodies that manage sport, like Little League Baseball and so forth. And then you get into also that community development. And so you start developing, and this is kind of an interesting aspect, start developing social capital. So those people that come through the sport and build on those practices that you've been trying to teach, and those ethics and morals, and that goodwill and teamwork, all those things that we try to work with in sport. You start building that social capital. You start building those young men and women who are going to be assets to your community, right? And then you also have the physical capital, which is the buildings and the other resources, fields, buildings, gyms that you start developing that may bring in people in the tourism realm as well, which can help with the economic capital in addition to that. And you'll see some of those communities, that live off of certain sports throughout a season, where look at all the sport tourism that's brought in Myrtle Beach. Build up that community development was focused on sport and trying to bring people into the community to help spend their dollars. There's a different means to do that with, in addition to the beach, right? And so we have that as well. And then you look at sport as a contributor to the fabric of the community, social capital, economic capital, human capital. They're contributing to the community. Sport is not just a drain of money and resources going out, it's also bringing back in, and bringing back in a positive manner. Okay? And so community sport development is not just about sport in the community. It's about developing the society within your community, the interaction among the different races and ethnicities and religious backgrounds. That's one commonality. A lot of times on the sport field, we're all working towards the same goal, and we forget all those differences, or at least we're interacting and learning more about each other through that means. The human capital, which building those good individuals that we want in our community through and using sport as a means to do so. And then also this sport community or sport community sport development implies that we're a means to a human development, and we're helping develop people. We're developing those people. We're developing good sound communities and good strong communities based upon this idea of sport. So sport can play a big role, and there's a couple good videos I edited in there to help show these initiatives that go about sport for all and this community of sport development idea, and using the development or sport as a means to develop communities and good sound communities. The last thing here is just covering a little bit of information about, we talk about different realms where we see sport in public, nonprofit, and commercial. The public sector is just government sponsored. The government's going to sponsor recreation and sport, state, federal, local level, both the United States and Canada. You have your municipal parks and recreation agencies. You might see, the Armed Forces, MWR. Sometimes the state games are sponsored, so whether it's a senior state games or state track meets or other state events, they're sponsored by the governments of the area. School-based intramurals and club sports, because their money comes from the government to run the schools. Intercollegiate athletics, campus recreation, as well as the National Sport Federation. Intercollegiate athletics, interesting one, because it kind of crosses over with commercial, blends the area, because again, intercollegiate relies heavily on people buying tickets, people watching TV and TV rights, radio, but it also gets subsidized by the university, and the universities use government money to do so. Not for profit. These are usually operated in public's interest, but do so outside the control of the government, usually run by voluntary boards. A lot of times you'll hear voluntary nonprofit organizations. But the idea is it's doing some good for the community, and sport here is used as, a means to develop people. The YMCAs, the idea is we're trying to use sport as a means to develop the individual, and originally it was developed to instill those Christian beliefs. Okay? Local community sport organizations, Little League, Pop Warner football, those are not-for-profit organizations that have that common interest and trying to use sport as a means to reach an end. National governing bodies, Little League, Pop Warner. There's also state sport advocacy organizations and national and international youth sport organizations. All fall into this not-for-profit realm. And the last one is the commercial sector, and those are sports organizations that exist solely to make profit, and that's the professional sports. Their job is to commercialize sport, make a profit off of it. You also have sporting goods stores, fitness centers. They all fall into the sport management, sport marketing firms in here. Resorts, and some of the resorts go into a kind of a sport-related themes that they can, where people travel quite a ways to play at. We went to Disney several times, in Disney's Wild World of Sports, and played in baseball tournaments there. But while they're having baseball tournaments, they're also having huge. They had wrestling tournaments, basketball I've seen, lacrosse, all going on while they're having these major baseball tournaments as well. And so it was a great way to bring people in and make some more money, and using the youth sport as the means to do that. Okay. So that'll be it for kind of giving us an overview, and I know it's a quick overview. Some of it should be review for what you've had in the past, and now we're adding on kind of that recreational sport focus. And as we build throughout the rest of the time, this is kind of our foundation of what is an understanding of what recreation and sport, recreational sport is. Okay. All right. Well, we'll catch up with you tomorrow on the next round of information.